This is Your Anxiety Toolkit, episode number 128. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Can I just begin by telling you guys how grateful I am for you all? It is almost 1 week until we have Thanksgiving here in the United States of America, and this is a tradition I'm still wrapping my head around. It's not something that I grew up with when I lived in Australia for the first, 19, 20 years of my life. And here I am now becoming, I think I'm getting better at really being used to this whole tradition of taking time each year to be grateful. But what really came up for me this holiday season is just this feeling of this thought I should say too, what if I don't really feel that grateful? What if I'm struggling with gratitude? What if it doesn't feel quite right to me right now? And so I thought I would invite my amazing dear friend Shala Nicely to discuss this, because this is a conversation her and I had, and I personally think it is a genius topic. Shala is coming on today to speak with us about the struggles you might be having with gratitude, and together we troubleshoot those problems and come to hopefully give you some tools to manage the holiday season if you're struggling to access that emotion or experience of gratitude, right? It's okay if you don't like it or you're not really there right now. So I'm so excited to share with you this amazing, amazing interview with Shala Nicely. But before we do so, let's just cover a couple of really important housekeeping pieces. Number one, let's do the I Did a Hard Thing segment. Now, this one is so cool. I got this from the online private Facebook group called CBT School Campus. And somebody had posted, when I had asked for people to post their I Did a Hard Thing, they posted this. They said, "I've birthed a human. This is something OCD told me I would never be able to do. And I am caring for her every day with OCD right along with us." And I just love this message. I mean, how many times has mental illness told us that we can't do something? There's something really important in our life and it tells us we cannot do it. But this is just such a great example of staring your fear in the face and living by your values and doing really, really hard things. So congratulations. I am so excited. This is an anonymous poster, but I just wanted to honor giving birth to a human is a hard thing. That's absolutely a hard thing. So, going along and having OCD go along with us, absolutely. Same. Just such important, amazing strength that you guys have. So, two things to think about and know before we get into the episode. Number one, if you're listening to this right now, you still have a couple of days, I think 3 or 4 days, to purchase BFRB School. This is an online course for anyone who struggles with hair pulling or skin picking or nail biting or any other body-focused repetitive behavior. Now, this is very similar to ERP School. It is basically me training you, if you're interested, on how to perform the correct treatment, which is habit reversal training, with your BFRB on your own. So if you do not have access to treatment for a BFRB that you or a family member struggle with, this might be the course for you. You can go over to cbtschool.com and click on online courses and you will see it right there. Or you can click in the show notes and we'll have a link right there for you. Or if you are an Instagram follower, go on over there and the link is in my bio. So that's there for you. I love this course. It's actually one of the main courses I imagined making when I first started CBT school. And, I really loved creating a program for people who are so very underserved in our mental health community. So I'm super, super proud of that. And it sounds like people are loving it. So that's always positive as well. Last piece of housekeeping. If you go over to CBT School, we now have a new free video training. It is called How to Correct Common Cognitive Distortions or Thoughts Related to Anxiety. It is a free training. It's a video training that I did. You can click in the link there or go over to cbtschool.com/thinkwisely. And basically what this training is me giving basic compassion-focused tools to correct thoughts about ourselves. If you have OCD or anxiety, panic disorder, phobias, we're not correcting specific thoughts related to your specific struggles. We're really working at correcting the way we speak to ourselves, the way we talk to our deep sense of insecurity. We focus on being compassionate in the words we use to describe ourselves. And we focus on correcting the common distortions that we often get stuck using, mostly habitually, from early childhood or, times in our life where we were harder on ourselves. And we work at creating a more mindful-based, compassionate-based alternative to those thoughts. So if you're someone who is pretty hard on yourself, or you're someone who really struggles with self-judgment, this might be an amazing training for you. And it's something I really have wanted to bring out because I think we could all stand to be a little kinder to ourselves. Am I right? Probably I am. I'm going to guess that I'm right there, but I could be wrong. If you don't feel like you need it, you don't have to take it. That's totally fine. All right. So going to go over to the show. I am introducing the amazing Shala Nicely. Thank you again so much, Shala, for coming on and talking about this very important topic. If you want the show notes, go ahead and click on those. It'll give you a little bit of a rundown about what Shala's speaking about. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts. So have a wonderful day and enjoy the show. Well, welcome. I am here to speak with the amazing Shala Nicely. Welcome.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad to be here with the amazing Kimberly Quinlan.
I love it. We are actually popping on real quick to have a conversation around gratitude, but not the typical gratitude conversation. We're actually addressing some of the common struggles people have with gratitude. So I know you have a lot to say. I just really want to give you the microphone and hear what you have to say around what are some of the common struggles people have with gratitude, especially over the holidays.
Yeah, so I think I called you, I don't remember, it was a couple weeks or a couple months ago, and said, gratitude just is not doing it for me. Like, I'm not feeling it. And so I really spent some time thinking about what was the problem here that was coming when I was trying to use gratitude, because I was clearly doing something wrong, so to speak, because it was actually making me feel worse. And so I thought about it and figured out that for me, there, I think, are three common struggles. And the first two, I bucket under the category of gratitude by comparison. So I'll talk about those two first. I think that we have a big tendency to compare ourselves to other people. And I think when you have anxiety and OCD, we have an even greater tendency to do that. And comparing just never works out well. I don't know who said the famous quote, comparison is the thief of happiness, but I totally believe that. And so I think this gratitude by comparison concept that was happening to me is that it occurs when you're supposedly doing better, and I'll put better in quotes, than someone else. And the gratitude was sort of coming from that, but it was sort of in a skewed way that was making me feel bad. So the two types of gratitude that I put under here are relief-induced gratitude and guilt-induced gratitude. Both types of what I call gratitude by comparison. So let me talk about the relief-induced gratitude first. So a good example of this might be, you, Kimberly, live in Los Angeles. You guys have had to deal with these horrible fires. I'm on the other side of the country in Atlanta where that kind of thing doesn't happen. So relief-induced gratitude might be me hearing from you that you've got to evacuate and then looking at the news and seeing how horrible it looks and going, oh, thank goodness that's not happening in Atlanta. Like that would be so horrible if that was happening. I'm so glad I live in Atlanta. And while that's true, that kind of situation can make you feel more thankful for your situation, I think it tends to be short-lived. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The other type is guilt-induced gratitude. And this happens when you and another person to whom you're comparing yourself aren't doing well, but the other person seems to be doing worse than you're doing. So this might be, you have a friend struggling with a really serious disease, friends going through a divorce, a child really struggling, and say you have anxiety or OCD, and you look at them and you think, well, I'm struggling, but they're struggling more. So I shouldn't feel the way I'm feeling. I should be grateful that I'm not struggling like they're struggling. And so I think if we look at both of these are a form of trying to take another perspective, and that's good. But I think what happens with each of them in the relief-induced gratitude, we're often omitting compassion for the other's suffering. And I think that's why it doesn't last very long. It's like, oh my gosh, Kimberly is going through these horrible fires and it's terrible. And whew, thank goodness it's not me. And I don't want to think about that. And we shove it in the corner. It's like, we don't really have compassion for them. We're just sort of relieved it's not happening to us. And it's painful to think about. So let's shove it over there. And that's why I think the relief-induced gratitude is quite short-lived for both of those reasons. No compassion or little compassion, and we're just shoving it away. I think with the other form, guilt-induced gratitude, we're omitting compassion for ourselves. We're having a ton of compassion for the other folks, like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible, they're suffering. But when we look at our own suffering, we're like, well, my suffering isn't as bad. So therefore, I'm not going to have any compassion for myself because all my compassion is going over there for my friends. So I think those are the issues with those two types of gratitude. Because I think that what we want to do to optimally use gratitude is acknowledge our own feelings, not just, think about the experience of other people and discount our own suffering, but acknowledging that we're suffering and this is hard and that's okay. Like it's okay to be suffering. It's okay to be in this hard experience. It's okay to be anxious, to feel like you're not making as much progress as you want to be making, to feel frustrated or stuck. Like it's okay. And really using self-compassion as a foundation for the gratitude. For instance, if say somebody's really struggling with their OCD, and I think a lot of people with OCD, especially with the problems we have with the I'm so OCD issues, so many people with OCD hear that and think, well, if everybody's so OCD, I should just be able to get it together. I don't need to be working on this. I just need to stop because everybody else is so OCD and they'll just stop. So I should just do that too. And I think instead is saying, OCD is really hard. And I'm going to acknowledge that I'm anxious and I'm frustrated, but that I have the 10th most debilitating condition in the world. And I'm going to recognize that everybody with OCD feels like I do it at one point or another. And I'm just going to give myself the kindness I need and do the best I can and know that I'm working really hard. And then on that foundation say, and I'm really grateful that I'm taking this moment to take care of myself. I'm grateful that I have a good friend to support me. I'm grateful I have this great self-help book I'm using. I'm grateful I have CBT School or Your Anxiety Toolkit podcast. You can use that foundation of self-compassion to build gratitude that then feels meaningful to you.
Right. What would you say and sometimes I think I feel this way where I don't really want to be grateful. Like, life is hard and I don't really want to, but all the people have shirts that are like gratitude t-shirts. And I notice on Instagram, a lot of people are like, let's do a 30-day gratitude challenge. What would you say to that?
Well, I'd say if it feels right to you and it helps, great. But if you're having problems like this feels like it's being forced on me and I should be grateful, I think this is the third challenge that people have, which is forced gratitude. And I think what we do when we feel like we're forcing ourselves to be grateful is that we're unintentionally shaming ourselves. And we can do that, unfortunately, with other people too. So, for instance, you could say, I should be grateful. All these people are walking around with gratitude t-shirts and doing these gratitude challenges, and I should be, and I'm not. So what's wrong with me? Like, I'm not feeling very grateful. In fact, I'm feeling the opposite of grateful right now. And so we're shaming ourselves by telling ourselves we should be grateful and what's wrong with us that we're not.
Right.
I think the other thing that can happen, and I think people mean well when they do this, but friends and family members could see somebody who's struggling, especially somebody who might have been struggling for a while, and they're not quite sure how to help. And they get frustrated and say things like, you've got everything going for you. Why can't you just focus on what you're thankful for? Why can't you just focus on the positive or what you could be grateful for instead of constantly focusing on all these things that are wrong? And I think this gets into the concept of toxic positivity, which you taught me about, which is the notion that we should only show or experience good or positive emotions. And I think that is such a harmful, even though that's supposed to be, that's why it's toxic, right? People are trying to be helpful by just focusing on the positive. But, if you look just at that great Disney movie, Inside Out, where they animated all of the emotions, I think the whole point of that movie was to show negative emotions have their place. They're actually useful. They're indicators that we need to work on things, that we need to take care of ourselves. We don't want to constantly shove them away, because if we shove them away and say, I can only be positive, that's just going to make us feel worse. So I think if we are feeling like we're being forced into gratitude, it can trigger the shame component in ourselves or in others and just end up making ourselves feel worse.
Right. And I would say, I would extend on that is if you're someone who was surrounded by toxic positivity in childhood or in a relationship, that in and of itself can be the cause of why you struggle with gratitude, right? Because it's been pushed on you. Like you've said, it's been forced onto you, and your relationship with gratitude isn't a healthy one, right? Like it's only, if anything, it's shame. Like you said, it's been shamed. So what would you think to do in that situation?
So the way that I like to think about gratitude is thinking about it in a way that really is based on mindfulness. And so there's a little trick that I use that's sort of goofy to try to help myself with this, because it is a form of taking another perspective, but I'm trying to get rid of the comparison issues that we talked about earlier. And so I call this the Thomas Jefferson trick. And so Thomas Jefferson invented the swivel chair. And I'm sitting in one now, right? I'm sitting in a swivel chair now. We totally take swivel chairs for granted. But when he invented this, right, this was a big deal. And so what I'll do is I'll look around wherever I am, like in my office, and I think, if Thomas Jefferson were here with me, what would make him fall off his newly invented swivel chair because he'd be so completely blown away by what he was looking at? And that often helps me pick out the small things, like this plastic water bottle. This would blow Thomas Jefferson's mind, right? They didn't have plastic. There wasn't an easy way to take water with them anywhere. It's been a fun way for me to just look at the everyday things in life and see them with wonder. And because I think that's so important, is a lot of times we can get so habituated to what's around us. We don't realize that, people in Thomas Jefferson's time, and, he was one of the very wealthy, well-to-do people. Think about people who weren't doing as well as he was. They didn't have any of this that we have today, really. I mean, even their houses, weren't as stable as our houses are today. And if we can so what I'm doing is I'm taking a historical comparison perspective, not comparing with anybody who's around today, but to the people who came before us and saying, wow, look at what we've accomplished as people and as a society. Look at what we have. And it's an exercise in mindfulness because you can do that and then you'll forget and totally take your water bottle for granted and be annoyed when it's empty, right? But then you can just come back to it. Oh, yeah, mindfulness. Like, what in this room can I look at with wonder? And so it's just a fun way that I've found to practice gratitude that's built on that foundation of mindfulness, which is just, again, coming back over and over to the present moment and what's really in front of us.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so powerful. And true, because I think when we do practice gratitude, sometimes we compare to the very large things instead of looking at the simplest things. Like for me, it's Band-Aids. Like, so grateful for Band-Aids. Like,
agreed.
So grateful for Band-Aids. You know what I mean? And it means nothing about me. It's just that's one thing I can access. And if that's all I can access, that's fine. Would you agree? Like, I feel almost compelled to share with people, like, you don't even have to be grateful if you don't want to. Like, can we even maybe give permission to people that they don't have to engage in gratitude?
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things that if it works, great. If you're having issues with it, you can look at some of these stumbling blocks that I found and see if it works for you. But I don't think we need to feel like we should do this. I think gratitude has become almost it's got a lot of good research behind it, I think, and all of that. But I think it can also, things like this can be picked up as a fad. And then everybody thinks they should be doing it. And then they feel bad if they're not.
Right. I agree. And I think that there is tons of research. I mean, there's even research about free flow journaling gratitude and how that can be beneficial. But I also feel like that really involves a degree of intention, right? If you don't want to be doing that, and if anyone is doing that because they just feel like they should, the intention, you're not really accessing a real degree of gratitude anyway. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and I'll give you a personal example. So I have been using this thing called the Go Journal, which I know you know too. And at the bottom of each day, I think it's 3 questions that they ask, what were you grateful for today? That wasn't doing it for me. So I cross it out every day and I put, what 3 things did I learn? And that's what's meaningful for me. And if there's some day that I want to answer the gratitude part, I'll answer the gratitude part. But a lot of times that's not speaking to me. And what's speaking to me is what I learned from my experience during the day. So I think that's an example of, if it doesn't work, that's okay. Don't force yourself that it should work. It's okay to have some tools work well and some tools not work so well.
Right. That's cool. I didn't think of that because I actually find, particularly when I write down my 3, I sometimes am just fudging that. That's where my intention goes because I'm like, I don't really care. Like, I just write anything down. Because I want it to be over. I love being grateful, but I don't resonate with it as much as I do some of the other mindfulness practice. And I think that is because I feel like I've had some toxic positivity in my life and I still want to protect myself from that. And, I think it's kind of giving yourself permission to be on a journey with it as well.
Yes, and to have it serve different purposes at different points in your life. So, each of us might find gratitude works well at some times and not well at others, and that's okay, accepting that.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of it does often come down to self-compassion as much, holding your pain instead of pushing into some kind of positivity frame of mind. I think if you can start there, that's a really great place to start.
Agree completely, because if we can validate our own emotional experience, that's one of the biggest gifts that we can give ourselves. That is something to be grateful for, because for those of us with anxiety and OCD, it's hard. It gets easier as you practice, but it's hard. But I think it is the root of all compassion for other people, is being able to be compassionate with ourselves. And being able to be compassionate with ourselves just puts us in a place where we're supported and we're in a good place to help ourselves and help others.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so is there anything else you want to share?
I don't think so. I just appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about this topic, and I hope folks find it helpful.
I think so. I think so. I think from me, my experience, it's like, oh, that's such a great idea. Gratitude is a really great idea. And it is, and it is. And then there's this little but that comes in afterwards. So this whole episode, the reason I wanted to do it was I just wanted to speak to that accept, but whatever it might be, that hesitation that people may be having with it. And I love what you have to say about relief-induced gratitude and guilt-induced gratitude. I think you're onto something there.
Well, thank you again for having me on, and I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Shala.
Thank you.
Please note that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.